Hello and welcome to Wealth Approach Podcast. I'm JR Gondeck, as always, joined by Megan Kowalski and Michael Schneider. It's bonus season. To start the year as we get to late January and February. So the topic of the month is best ways to use your bonus and things to consider around this time of year.
And just as something to note, this would be applicable to really any inflow. So if you have an annual gift you received from someone or other just influxes of resources, these will be applicable for any of those situations. But we figured since bonus season is timely, we would cover it that way.
And the first thing that we think that you should look at is really take a step back, look at your balance sheet, see where you are from your overall financial health perspective. Look to see, do you have any outstanding debts? If you do, what are those interest rates? Pay off some of those high interest credit cards first. Look and sort of pay down any other debts sort of from that avalanche method where you take the highest interest rate, pay those off first, and just kind of work your way down. Also, you want to look to really identify your sources of liquidity if you need them, whether it's an emergency fund or a slush fund with some extra cash, whether it's making sure you have a home equity line open or other areas where, if you do need to you do have a little bit of a liquidity crunch that you can access those or use the bonus money to build up some of those extra funds as well.
And Michael, when you're looking at the avalanche of interest rates, right? I mean, clearly, if your credit card at 28% or 19% interest, that's easy. As you start to get the mortgage debt or maybe margin against your portfolio, if you've used that, there's other considerations from taxes and other things. So as you get into the lower single digit as far as interest rates, and there's other advantages, it's something else to consider. But clearly, when you're in the credit card range or anything in the double digit, as far as interest rates, that's an easy one to address quickly.
Yeah, and even the emergency fund, we know that's not the most fun use of your resources. But making sure that that is fully covered in case there's anything that were to come up, that's obviously very imperative. And then we wanted to cover, there's kind of best uses and probably worse uses of your bonus that we'll just talk through. In general, we don't advise that you only be responsible with your money. What we mean by that is let yourself have a little fun, carve off 10-15% for, just a fun purchase or a vacation, whatever that is, so that you're not holding yourself back because that can lead to overspending later. So just kind of earmark that. But then for the majority of it, this is where you should kind of take a best practice and avoid worst practices when it comes to these resources.
And
You're
when you
saying
look,
we shouldn't buy all lottery tickets and hope for the best?
That would probably go in the worst category. Yeah. I mean, unless you know you're buying the winning ticket, then by all means.
and when you assess that, Megan, right? To, I think a great starting point, especially as you end the year, start the year, is start with that net worth statement where you list all the asset values and how they're titled, which is important because one of the best uses is to get as much in Roth, either 401k money, Roth IRA money. And again, a Roth IRA is money that you've paid the taxes on as you put the money in, and it grows tax free for the rest of your life. And again, I think it's an area underlooked by many investors, and it really doesn't matter which tax bracket you're in today. The tax free bucket is very, very attractive. So you have the backdoor IRA to Roth conversion where you can make a contribution. And if you're above the limit for a Roth contribution directly, you can convert that and get money in. If you have a 401k and it's not Roth, you can earmark in many plans a certain amount that you're comfortable, and we can work with you on mapping out how much, and have a plan over time. To what you said earlier, Megan, if you're already in retirement or receive something, walking through Roth conversions with some extra liquidity is a great long-term plan, both for you and ultimately your heirs.
And Jared, within the 401k plan, how would you go about doing a Roth conversion within the 401k plan itself?
Well, and when you look at this, Michael, I think it was Jack Bogle that, has sort of put years ago talked about how penalizing IRAs can be, right? They're great as you're starting your career. You have all the tax-free growth, and then you get to retirement, you've accumulated $1 million or multiples of millions in some cases. Really, that let's say you have $3 million in your 401k or IRA, from an after-tax perspective, especially if you took it all at once, you have 40% less. Versus had you paid the tax along the way, maybe you accumulated a little bit less, but it's all tax-free. And mechanics of 401k typically as you walk through and look through the options, there's forms, or if you call in, you could fill out a certain amount you want to convert or all of it. And for sure, your ongoing contributions should be targeted to Roth if it's available. But again, these are great long-term things to consider because really those IRAs can almost be like an estate tax, at the end of life because of that huge income tax penalty that the IRAs have versus the Roth, which is fully tax-free.
Yeah, and to clarify, so that's if you're already maxing out your Roth contribution. So if you've already met that goal where you're maxing those out and you have additional funds, when employers make the contributions to you, those are going to typically be pre-tax. So you have the option to convert the employer match to Roth or previous pre-tax contributions that you made is what JR is referring to. Another one is just employer match. So again, if you're not maxing out your retirement, that's a great best practice to approach. HSA accounts are the superheroes of investment accounts. They're even more beneficial than Roth options because they're triple tax preferred. So if you have that option and you're already using an HSA accepted plan, that's another one to max out if you have not already.
And when you're
Um,
doing these some of these contributions, whether it's to an HSA or other self-directed IRAs, with some of that bonus money, is that you can do a prior year contribution up through the tax payment day in April. So it is something to use the bonus money to look back towards last year.
And Mega, let's flesh out the HSA a little bit more. I'm sure many people have those. But when you think about the benefits, me personally, as everyone knows, I have a lot of kids, and right now I'm paying for 4 mouths of orthodonture, right?
mhm.
And if you think about using HSA money to pay medical expenses, depending what tax bracket are, you could think if you're in the 30% tax bracket, it's like getting a third off of that expense by making the contribution, right? So it's really helpful as you have a lot of medical expenses. And if there's years that you don't have any, you just accumulate until some of those hit. But again, they grow tax free, as you said, Megan, and from paying out of pocket versus using the HSA, you get the savings going in, and like I said, it goes out tax free. So, like I said, depending on your tax bracket, it justifies it, makes it a little easier to pay for four mouths at once.
And don't forget that when you make the contribution to the HSA, to make sure that money does get invested as well. And so it's not just sitting in a money market fund.
Definitely. And I mean, these are probably obvious, but probably worst practices is spending before you receive it. I know we all get excited. We want to do the patio, update the patio, do the renovation in our house. And while some of those could be accretive to your home value and might be still the best decision for a growing family, that's something to consider and we can assist with a financial plan. But just being careful to make sure that you're really also prioritizing your financial goals, just as important to some of those maybe fun goals that you want to accomplish along the way as well. And then last, I mean, we touched on a little bit of some of the tax advantage plans to try to prioritize, but really, again, focusing on short and long-term goals. So short-term goals might already be achieved, but not forgetting that someday you do want to retire. So really prioritizing your investment and savings goals that you might have already had. Um, and working on some of those. And then also just different buckets of money. So if you're focusing on a lot of retirement resources, that's great for the future and for retirement, but making sure you're also allocating to after-tax accounts, whether that be a joint account, individual, a trust, just so you have some liquidity should you need in the future for home projects or other things, that you have that after-tax dollar that you can pull from, so you're not having to dip into long-term retirement assets as well.
And Megan, one of the big topics we have with many families right now is over home purchases, right? And a lot of people have been saving cash. Maybe they've accumulated bonus the last few years, waiting to buy that home, waiting for the 3% mortgages to come back, or waiting for home prices to start to fall, and neither has happened. So mortgages are reluctantly in this 7% range. So as you contemplate with that cash down payment and how much you can afford and what you should purchase and when, it, again, is a good use for how to map out a long-term strategy with the funds. Because as I've said, we've basically been in a housing depression as far as activity the last couple of years because of the amount of people that have a very low mortgage and the people that want to move up but don't want to give up the low mortgage to move up. And again, it's a conundrum, but as you have bonus money or other things to bridge the gap on that, it's a good time to reassess that overall.
Right. And then when you're looking at the different investment options as well, just to consider your overall portfolio and whether you do want to start looking at whether it's an alternative investment, if you say like some private equity funds, if you want to have some more long-term growth, or if you're saying, I'm close to retirement, I don't want to take as much risk, where are some other income opportunities that we can start using some of that money towards? Or at the end of the day, if you've invested well and you have a lot of unrealized gains, maybe use some of that bonus to pay some taxes and diversify out of some of those larger positions that are taking up too big of a percentage of your portfolio.
And Michael, it's a key topic, obviously, with the concentration risk in the stock markets the last couple of years. And again, as our founder, Gene Lerner, used to say, that the way to become really wealthy is to put a lot of your money in one investment or one stock and be right, and it goes up, right? On the other hand, the way to lose a lot of money is to have a lot of money in one stock or one investment and be wrong. So diversification is key, especially how the markets have played out over the last couple of years. And again, a huge factor of what they consider as you're contemplating bonus. So with that, we want to thank you for tuning in, and we'll touch base next month.
Thank you.